Professor Kaldros had seen many struggling students in his 4 decades teaching ancient galactic languages at the Celestial Archives Institute, but none quite like the human. Jessica Wright sat in the back row, her exam scores consistently hovering in the lower quartile, her pronunciation of extinct dialects abysmal, and her comprehension of grammatical structures barely functional. "Once again, Miss Wright has achieved the lowest score in the class," Kaldros announced, his crystalline voice resonating with disappointment. He displayed her latest test results on the holographic board: 38% on Old Centauri, 41% on Ancient Krell 9, 35% on Protothoracian. The other students, elite linguists from 15 species, shifted uncomfortably. A few couldn't suppress smug glances toward the human. Perhaps, Kaldros continued, humanity's recent admission to the institute was premature. Ancient languages require cognitive flexibility your species may simply lack. Jessica's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. She'd heard variations of this speech for 3 months now. However, Kaldros said, tradition demands I offer all students the field practicum before final evaluation. Next week, we visit the Vorthales ruins on Kepler 452c. Prepare yourselves. The Vorthales ruins were legendary, an ancient site predating the current galactic coalition by millennia. Dozens of expeditions had documented the vast temple complex, but its primary chamber remained sealed behind a door covered in undeciphered script. Every linguistic expert in the known galaxy had attempted translation. All had failed. The class arrived on a humid morning, the twin suns of Kepler 452c casting long shadows across weathered stone. Kaldros led them through corridors covered in inscriptions that had been successfully translated, histories of a long-dead civilization, religious texts, mundane records. These outer chambers use standard protoscript, Kaldros lectured as they walked. Note the subject-object-verb structure, the use of contextual markers, the... He stopped abruptly. They'd reached the sealed door. It towered 5 meters high, its surface covered in intricate symbols that seemed to shift and change depending on viewing angle. Xenolinguists had identified elements of 17 different ancient languages mixed together, but no one had ever successfully determined the pattern. This, Kaldros said quietly, is the greatest unsolved linguistic puzzle in the archives. The Vorthales cipher. Your assignment is simple: examine the door, apply your training, and submit your analysis. I expect failure, this has defied experts for 2 centuries. But the attempt is educational. The students dispersed, taking scans, making notes, consulting their translation databases. Jessica stood alone, staring at the door. An hour passed. Students began submitting preliminary analyses. A Centauri identified what might be numerical sequences. A Krell 9 suggested religious iconography. All were documented, all inconclusive. Jessica remained motionless, her eyes tracking across the symbols with unusual intensity. "Miss Wright," Kaldros called. "You haven't submitted anything." "I'm not ready yet, Professor." "You've been staring at the door for 73 minutes. "Yes, sir." Kaldros approached, irritation flickering in his crystalline structure. "Perhaps you should at least attempt." "It's a rebus," Jessica said suddenly. "A what?" "A rebus. A puzzle where pictures represent sounds or words. We have them on Earth." She pointed at a cluster of symbols. "Everyone's been trying to translate these symbols directly, but they're not meant to be read individually. They're meant to be read as sounds that combine into different words entirely." Kaldros's structure brightened with interest. "Explain." Jessica traced her finger along a sequence. "This symbol looks like the old Centauri glyph for water, but in ancient Krell 9, a similar symbol makes a sha sound. Next to it is the Protothoracian mark for sun, which in Vorlesh sounds like tel together, shatel, which in the oldest recorded pre-coalition language means opening." "That's highly speculative," Kaldros said, but his voice had lost its certainty. "Is it?" Jessica pulled out her datapad, displaying a pattern analysis. Look at the door holistically. It's not 17 languages mixed randomly. It's 17 languages used deliberately to create a phonetic puzzle. Each symbol contributes a sound, and those sounds form words in yet another language, one that probably predates all current ancient languages. She moved to the door's center panel. This sequence here. Using cross-linguistic phonetics, vor the lisan marken. In the theoretical proto-language, that should mean, speak the old words. How could you possibly know that? A Zentari student demanded. Jessica smiled slightly. Because humans have been playing with language puzzles for thousands of years. Hieroglyphics, pictographs, phonetic loans between languages, we've done all of this before. On Earth, we had Chinese characters borrowed into Japanese with completely different pronunciations. We had Egyptian symbols that represented sounds instead of meanings. This rebus isn't alien to us. It's familiar. Kaldros stepped forward. If you're correct, can you open it? Maybe. Jessica studied the door's center mechanism, a circular panel with movable segments. If I'm right about the phonetic pattern, the locking mechanism responds to sonic frequencies. We need to speak the sequence. She took a breath and pronounced a series of sounds drawn from 17 different linguistic traditions, her voice shifting through phonemes that most species couldn't produce. It sounded less like language and more like music. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the door shuddered. Ancient mechanisms groaned. Slowly, impossibly, it began to open. The class stood in stunned silence as light spilled from the chamber beyond, revealing artifacts untouched for millennia. Kaldros turned to Jessica, his entire crystalline form glowing with a mixture of shock and respect. Miss Wright, how did you solve in 2 hours what has defied experts for 2 centuries? Jessica shrugged. My test scores are low because I'm terrible at memorizing dead grammar rules. But on Earth, we have 6,000 living languages and countless dead ones. We've been mixing them, borrowing from them, and playing with their sounds since before we had writing. To us, languages aren't separate systems. They're just different instruments in the same orchestra. She gestured at the door. You've all been trained to see languages as discrete, complete systems. I was trained to see them as overlapping chaos that humans navigate every day. This puzzle wasn't designed for perfect linguistic knowledge. It was designed for someone comfortable with linguistic messiness. Kaldros looked at her failed test scores on his datapad, then at the open door she'd unsealed. Miss Wright, he said slowly, I believe I've been testing the wrong skills entirely. Jessica grinned. Yeah, Professor. You have been. And as the class entered the newly opened chamber, Kaldros realized that humanity's greatest linguistic gift wasn't precision or knowledge. It was their complete comfort with chaos, their joy in finding patterns where others saw only noise, and their fundamental understanding that sometimes the messiest approach was the most effective. The galaxy had linguists. Earth had translators who'd been playing telephone across 6,000 languages for millennia. And they were just getting started.